From soybeans to smartphones, prices on everyday goods may soon rise sharply. Behind the scenes, tensions between the United States and the European Union are escalating into a comprehensive tariff confrontation, one that could reshape trade, supply chains, and inflation worldwide. On April 5, 2025, the U.S. government officially implemented a baseline 10% import tariff on most foreign goods, under the Liberation Day executive order signed by President Donald Trump. While a few strategic categories, like crude oil, pharmaceuticals, and semiconductors, were exempted, products from the EU were not spared. Without a new bilateral agreement, European exports to the U.S. could face an additional 10% levy, raising total tariffs to 20%. In response, the EU enacted its own retaliatory tax package, effective the same day, targeting U.S. exports like spirits, agricultural products, auto parts, industrial equipment, and vehicles, and with a flat 20% tariff. The economic stakes are high. The affected U.S. export value? Estimated at $320 billion. For the EU, the expected loss in revenue from the American market, a top export destination, could reach $580 billion. The ripple effects are already visible. Import costs have surged, and major American retailers, Walmart, Target, Nike, are adjusting pricing strategies. From gasoline to groceries to luxury electronics, consumers may feel the squeeze. Some analysts warn if Apple passes on the full tariff burden, a Pro Series iPhone could approach a retail price of $2,300. Beyond the checkout line, macroeconomic concerns are mounting. According to the Chicago Federal Reserve's modeling, U.S. tariffs could push core inflation, CPI, up by 1.3 percentage points. To contain it, the Fed may be forced to raise interest rates by another 1.5 points this year. The consequence? Unemployment could rise by 0.4, directly impacting household income and job stability. With inflation, loan rates, and essential costs all rising together, Marines are being forced to reassess their spending. Expenditures on housing, education, entertainment, and travel may face sharp cuts in the months ahead. The EU's countermeasures weren't just broad strokes, they were strategic. They targeted politically sensitive U.S. regions, especially agricultural and industrial states crucial in national elections. High tariffs were slapped on key exports like corn, soybeans, and almonds, staples of local economies in Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and California. Even cultural symbols weren't spared. American-made guitars, including those from iconic brand Gibson in Tennessee, made the list. Boeing, a symbol of U.S. industrial might, also took a hit. Several civil aviation orders in Europe have already been delayed or diverted due to higher costs, putting real pressure on the aerospace sector. And now, rising export costs are looping back into the domestic market. Products like bourbon from Kentucky and premium musical instruments may get more expensive at home as companies rethink supply chains and shift resources away from a now constrained European market. For middle-income and fixed-income families, already squeezed by rising costs across the board, this adds even more financial pressure. A May 2008 report from the Chicago Fed confirms it. Both the U.S. Liberation Day tariffs and the EU's retaliatory measures are driving a gradual uptick in core goods prices. Core goods PCE rose 0.3% month over month, pushing core PCE inflation up by 0.1 percentage points, modest in isolation. But central bankers see it as a possible early signal. Fed Chair Jerome Powell and FOMC members Austin Goolsbee and Tom Barkin all say inflationary momentum may only be getting started. With benchmark interest rates still in the 4.25 to 4.50% range, the Fed may soon face a tough choice: hold steady to support growth, or tighten policy To contain inflation, consumers are already adjusting. A Bloomberg survey shows household spending on monthly essentials rose by 4% to 8% compared to March 2025, mostly due to price hikes in electronics, home appliances, and building materials. Meanwhile, economic data from May shows a slight dip in overall consumer spending, down 0.1%, the first sign of caution after months of robust activity. The personal savings rate has also slipped, now just 4.5, its lowest level in a year. Tariff impacts are now spreading to sectors with globalized, complex supply chains, especially the automotive and high-tech industries. According to the German Auto Manufacturers Association, EU carmakers faced $500 million in extra costs in April alone due to U.S. tariffs on European auto parts. Automakers like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and Volkswagen, all of which operate assembly plants in the U.S. while relying on European components, have had to either absorb the additional cost or rethink logistics strategies entirely. On the flip side, the EU is considering carbon emissions taxes specifically targeting high-emission or non-compliant vehicles. Among those affected could be top-selling American EVs, like the Tesla Model Y. If enacted, environmental surcharges and compliance costs could raise the price of a Model Y in Europe by $4,000, $5,000. With EV prices rising and auto loan interest rates already elevated, some consumers may opt for lower-cost, less environmentally friendly vehicles or delay purchases altogether. Trade tensions between the US and EU are now evolving into a broad-scale economic conflict, affecting everything from groceries and electronics to aircraft and electric cars. As tariff policies take deeper effect, businesses and households alike must adjust to a landscape of higher costs, greater uncertainty, and shrinking financial flexibility. Whether the two sides can reach a resolution before long-term damage sets in will be a defining question for the remainder of 2025. Until then, the global economy may continue to feel the strain of a dispute with no clear end in sight. U.S. agriculture is facing an unprecedented crisis as trade tensions and environmental pressures reshape the nation's food supply. Can American farmers survive the perfect storm of tariffs, droughts, and global competition? In May 2025, the Trump administration imposed a sweeping 145% tariff on Chinese goods, triggering swift retaliation from Beijing. With a 125% levy on American farm products, the fallout was immediate. China canceled massive soybean and pork orders, slashing U.S. soybean exports by over 97% in just 1 week. A temporary 90-day deal eased tariffs slightly, down to 30% for the U.S. and 10% for China, but failed to restore competitiveness. Brazil and Argentina quickly captured market share, offering cheaper, untaxed goods. The sharp drop in exports disrupted domestic supply chains. Soy-based products, pork, and cereals became scarce, sending food prices soaring. Families across the country are now paying significantly more for everyday essentials, stretching grocery budgets and triggering concern about long-term food security. For low and middle-income households, these rising costs are not just inconvenient. They are forcing real sacrifices in diet, nutrition, and monthly spending priorities. Across America's heartland, the agricultural downturn is deepening. In Iowa alone, more than 500 family farms have closed in just 18 months. California has lost over 1 million acres of arable land to drought and urban water policies. In Nebraska, 28% of livestock farms are either operating at a loss or have shut down. Kansas wheat yields have dropped to their lowest level in nearly 6 decades. As production declines, the cost of staples like milk, bread, and vegetables continues to climb. With fewer local options, the U.S. is increasingly reliant on food imports, undermining national food independence. Households, especially in rural and working-class communities, are bearing the brunt of this shift, facing higher expenses and reduced access to fresh, affordable food. Small towns that once thrived on farming are now struggling with unemployment, empty storefronts, and a sense of economic insecurity. In California, Central Valley has seen over 1,200 farms shut down. Skyrocketing vegetable prices have forced a surge in imports from Mexico. In Iowa, corn production has dropped 17%. Over 500 family farms have folded. Prices for meat and grain have spiked sharply. In Texas, beef prices have surged nearly 38%. Severe drought and dry pastures have led to mass livestock sell-offs. In Nebraska, dairy costs have jumped 20 to 30%. Hundreds of farms have shuttered, disrupting meat processing supply chains. In Florida, orange output is down 65%. Abandoned groves are widespread. Orange juice prices are up dramatically. Consumers in these states are grappling with both food inflation and shortages. For lower-income families, the rising cost of produce, dairy and meat has made basic nutrition harder to afford. As local sources vanish, store shelves become more dependent on out-of-state or international supply, driving up prices even further. In some areas, food banks are reporting record demand, while grocery stores face intermittent shortages of fresh goods. For millions, the crisis is no longer distant. It's showing up at dinner tables. Canada is emerging as a powerhouse in North America, quietly transforming trade and industry while the U.S. faces mounting challenges. What hidden shifts are pushing American jobs, investments, and opportunities north of the border? Canada is quickly building a comprehensive manufacturing empire, attracting massive billion-dollar investments from global giants like Volkswagen, Stellantis, and GM. Ontario and Quebec have become hotbeds for EV battery and material plants, with Volkswagen's St. Thomas Gigafactory alone receiving a record-breaking 13 billion Canadian dollars in government support, as reported by the Globe and Mail in May 2025. This marks a historic turning point for Canada's auto sector, shifting the industrial spotlight northward. For U.S. industrial states like Michigan and Ohio, this new reality means job cuts as car makers and suppliers shift production across the border. Thousands of manufacturing jobs are moving, leaving American workers and communities facing growing uncertainty about their economic future. The U.S. now relies heavily on Canadian sources for key minerals, such as lithium, nickel, cobalt, and rare earths, crucial for EVs, smartphones, and advanced weapon systems. Under the U.S. IRA law, car makers only get tax breaks if minerals come from FTA, partners like Canada, making Ottawa a strategic supplier. In August 2024, the Pentagon made headlines by investing $20 million in a cobalt refining facility in Ontario, according to Bloomberg, a move described as unprecedented in defense supply chains. If Canada controls the mineral flow, the U.S. faces higher risks of production, delays for EVs and defense tech. Disruptions could hit American industry and energy security directly, causing price spikes, slower innovation, and threats to domestic jobs. Ottawa has signed more than 10 major trade agreements beyond the USMCA, including deals with the EU, UK, ASEAN, and CPTPP, opening access to over 1.5 billion consumers. Globally, the Financial Post noted, in the fourth quarter of 2024, Canadian exports to the EU surged 11.4% and over 14% to the UK, while exports beyond the US jumped 7.4%. Meanwhile, US companies are trapped by retaliatory tariffs and complex export rules, struggling to stay competitive. US goods are losing market share, with supply chains disrupted and investors favoring Canada as a gateway to global markets. American producers, from agriculture to tech, feel the squeeze, putting local businesses at risk and narrowing consumer choices. Since April 2025, new tariffs up to 50% on Chinese and EU imports have raised average U.S. consumer prices by 2.3%, costing each household $3,800 more annually, as estimated by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. In contrast, Canada's GDP grew by 2.2% in Q1 2025, attracting $50 billion in foreign direct investment and creating 413,000 new jobs last year. Retailers like Costco have rerouted supply chains through Canada to dodge tariffs, illustrating a shift in North American commerce. For Americans, higher prices, stagnant wages, and the loss of quality jobs are becoming the new normal. As manufacturing strength drains overseas, U.S. communities face lasting economic challenges that threaten long-term prosperity.